Hello again, my fellow Jeti users. Welcome back to my workshop. And now, in this video, I thought I'd show you some things regarding using a Jeti assist receiver with the central box, also with your 900 megahertz plugged in, because there are a couple of settings which the system will default to, which will cause the system not to work as you expect it to. In fact, in some ways, not working at all. And so I thought I'd run through what you'll see if you accept the default settings and what you need to do about it. And they're actually quite important. If you have a look on Jeti website, that's jetimodel.com, go to technical support and drop down that menu. There is a menu option there about the assist, and if you go into that and look at then the submenu there, they have a page showing lots of diagrams for connecting satellites to an assist, or assist and satellites to a central box. And there's loads of different possible methods of wiring them, and it mentions some of the settings you must use. But unless you're into really reading all these wiring diagrams and reading the text and understanding what it means, a lot of people look at it and just go, oh, I'm lost. So let's take a little look at it, what doesn't work and what settings you need to do to put it right. And in particular, you may not realize that your failsafe isn't going to work if you accept the defaults, which could be rather nasty. So let's look at what we've got here. We're starting off with an assist receiver, which is X-bus on expander port 2, and it goes into the central box receiver 1 socket. In order to back that up on 2.4 gigahertz, I'm using an RSAT2, but you could use a Rex 3 or any little Rex receiver. Again, output is X-bus, and here the expander port set to X-bus input oblique backup. I've covered this on several other videos, nothing fancy there. But you also fancy using the 900 megahertz backup. So here we have our little 900 megahertz satellite receiver. It's outputting X-bus on expander port 1, and it's plugged into receiver socket 2 on the central box. If you're not using an assist, but you're using two separate receivers in double path, as we are here, these two are bound in double path method, but you're not using the assist, so you don't need stabilization, you'd plug them into receiver port 1, receiver port 2, and then your 900 would plug into
inactivity alarm,
receiver port 3, or the X port if you've got a standard 200, which can then be set in Device Explorer. You have to set the X port or E1 R3 here to be an X-bus input or a receiver socket. It won't just default to it. Okie doke. So we've got everything cabled up correctly. All the settings for the ports are correct. What's the problem? Well, I'll wiggle the stick. There's the aileron. That's working. There's the throttle. I've done that as well, because I'll be using that to show a failsafe. I'll leave it at full throttle open. Lovely. Okay. Now, the assist has been set to work, and I rock it. Nothing's happening. Why am I not getting stabilization? I've set the modes to work. I've turned on the gain and everything. If I plug a servo into here, it'll stabilize. Don't, by the way, because these do not provide enough power out of the receiver sockets. They're very current limited. You might think they're on the same power bus all the way up, all these sockets, but the receiver ones are not. So don't plug in here unless you give it separate power. And I wouldn't try that in case they try cross-feeding. Anyway, why is stabilization not working? Okay, let's go into the Device Explorer, into our Rex 10, into its configuration and come down here to advanced properties. And there is why we're not getting stabilization, because stabilize the X bus output from the Rex 10 to the central box is switched off. Simply switch that on, as it does say there, use if central box is connected. Say OK to that. Come back here. Now I'll wiggle the assist, and we have stabilization. Whoopee! Lovely. Okay, now let's test all our transmissions. We press this button here. Let's, well, we can disable the primary module. That's the Rex 10 itself. So if we do that, disable it, yep. We should now be running on the RSAT, because it's cabled through here, through there. So have I got control of the servo? Yes. And if I wiggle the assist, it's still stabilizing, because it is stabilizing its output. That's good. So even if we've gone to the backup receiver there on 2.4 gig, we're still getting all the behavior we expect. Lovely. Come back here and do it again. Disable all except the 900 megahertz backup. Okay, let's do that. Let's see if our 900's working. Disable transmission, yes.
900 backup is active.
Goody good. And, oh, we still appear to be getting stabilization. That's nice, isn't it?
900 backup is active.
And I move the stick. Oh dear. You think, what's gone wrong?
900 backup is active.
My port settings are correct there. That's working. Why, when I move the aileron stick
900 backup is active.
or the throttle, is it not working? As you can hear from the transmitter, it's running on the 900. But here's the clue.
Backup is active.
Yeah, it's still stabilized. Why is it still stabilized? Because
900 backup is active.
this is still sending out stabilized servo data on its output, the X bus,
900 backup is active.
down to receiver port 1. And the central box will run always by default on receiver port 1.
900 backup is active.
It only goes to receiver port 2 if it gets no data on receiver port 1. Well, if this is stabilizing,
is active.
it means it's sending out servo data down there. So the central box thinks that everything is hunky-dory
backup is active.
on receiver port 1, and it's not switched to receiver port 2, which is our 900. And that's why
900 backup is active.
we're not getting any control, because there's no data arriving at the RSAT or the assist, because we've disabled the 2.4 gig. But this is still sending out stabilizing data, servo data. Central box thinks,
900
lovely.
Backup is active.
Let's do that for a moment. Now, I have programmed the central box failsafes. I'll just prove it. See, our throttle should close. It's working at the moment. There's full throttle. So if we disable all transmission, the throttle should close. Points that way, okay? We'll leave it open. Come back here. Now we'll disable all transmissions. So the 2.4 gig and the 900. Now when I do that, the throttle should go to failsafe.
Signal lost.
No, it doesn't.
Signal lost. Signal
Why?
lost.
Look
Signal
again.
Lost.
Watch this.
Signal lost. Signal
There's
lost.
no transmission whatsoever,
Signal lost.
and yet this is still stabilizing.
Signal lost.
And that's our clue
Signal
yet
lost.
again. I'll Silence
Signal
that.
lost.
Don't. Because this is still sending out a stabilized signal down to receiver 1, the central box sees no reason to change from that. It won't switch to receiver 2. It won't try switching to receiver 3. It's getting a nice servo signal down here, so it won't go into failsafe. Basically what it does is it runs off receiver 1 until it gets no data there. Then it tries receiver 2 and it runs off receiver 2 until it gets no data there. It checks receiver 3 if you were plugging in 3 separate ports, and runs on that until it gets no data on all 3, and then it goes into failsafe. And that's why it's not going into failsafe, because our assist is generating a stabilized output. Even though it's got no data coming from the transmitter, it's still generating a servo signal, stabilizing it and sending it down here, and so your central box thinks everything's hunky-dory. Now this is bad news. You do not want your model ploughing along at full throttle, even though you've set the fail-safes. Let's have a look at what the problem there is. It's back in the Rex 10 settings. And it's in here. And this is what it defaults to. It defaults to the fail-safe when it loses signal from both itself and the RSAT for being this setting here, intelligent, stabilized. And that is why it's putting out that stabilized output on the X bus. Now it might be suitable if you were plugging your servos direct into the Rex 10 rather than running them from the central box, because it will keep things stabilized when it's in failsafe, which is fine, but not when you're like this. You really need to disable assist in the failsafe mode. Yeah, now it won't be sending out that stabilizing data, and the central box can do its job. It will see, aha, nothing's arrived on receiver 1, switch to receiver 2, see if there's anything there. If receiver 2 fails, then I've try receiver 3 fails, then I can go into failsafe. Let's have a look. Okie dokie. Now let's just prove it's all working still. I have control, there's full throttle, stabilization's working. Good. Now, first of all, we will disable all except the 900 backup, and let's see this time if the 900 backup, which is plugged into central box receiver port 2, works. Remember, it didn't before because the assist was still providing an output. Disable transmission. Yes. And I'll prove
900
this.
backup is active.
Showing you that our 2.4 gig is down. Do I have control this time? We didn't before. Yes, I do.
900 backup is active.
Because this is no longer sending that intelligent, stabilized failsafe output on here.
900 backup is active.
The central box sees that receiver 1's lost signal. It's switched to receiver 2, which is our 900. Good.
900 backup is active.
Okay, let's kill that for a second. Now, if we disable transmission completely, will it go into failsafe? Will that throttle, that's fully open, there's closed, it's programmed to go to the closed position. I'll open it fully, come back here, disable transmission completely. Oh, press the wrong button. Now when I press yes, does that close?
Signal lost.
There we go.
Signal lost.
It works.
Signal lost. Signal lost.
Bring it back online. So there you go. There's a couple of the settings in the assist receiver that you really need to set, regardless of whether you've got a 900. But it does also explain why, if you're setting up this way, why when you try it initially, your 900 appears not to work, even though you're tearing your hair out because you've You've set all the ports properly and you've cabled up properly and it still doesn't work. Now you know why. And now you know why your failsafe settings don't work. Okie doke. Hope that helps, folks.